My Weird School Fast Facts: Explorers, Presidents, and Toilets. Written by Dan Gutman. Pictures by Jim Pelot. Chapter 2: The United States is Born. It took a long time, but it finally dawned on those dopey Europeans that America was a cool place and not just a big landmass that prevented them from getting to India. So they figured they might as well stick around here and establish colonies. Settlers from Spain formed a colony in Florida. The Dutch settled in New York City, but they called it New Amsterdam. That's where Peter Minuit met with the local Native American chiefs and gave them 2 boxes of stuff. Probably hatchets, cloth, metal posts, and beads in exchange for the island of Manhattan. No kidding, all that stuff in the boxes was worth about $24. $24 for an island! Today you can't even buy a video game for $24. But the country that started the most of America's 13 colonies was England. In 1587, settlers from England started a colony on Roanoke Island off the coast of North Carolina. 3 years later, some other Englishmen came to visit the colony, and you know what they found? What? Nothing. The Roanoke colony had completely vanished. Poof! The cabins were gone. The settlers were gone. Their animals were gone. The only thing they found was the word Croatan carved on a fence post and crow carved on a tree. That was weird. The lost colony was never found. Ooh, creepy. In 1607, some other Englishmen founded a settlement on the banks of the James River in Virginia. They called it Jamestown, so it had the perfect name. One settler, John Smith, was captured by the Powhatan tribe. They were going to put him to death when a Powhatan princess named Pocahontas saved his life. Pocahontas was a nice lady. She learned how to speak English, she gave food to the settlers, and she even married one of them. Isn't that romantic? Maybe we'll get married someday, Arlo. Over my dead body. In the early 1600s, some other groups from England, the Pilgrims and the Puritans, settled in what is now Massachusetts. Well, the Pilgrims didn't plan to go to Massachusetts. They wanted to go to Virginia, but they got blown off course. Oops, they were 500 miles off. That reminds me of the time my family was in the car and my dad missed the exit on the highway. We had to drive hours out of our way. My mom was so mad she didn't talk to my dad for the rest of the day. The local Native Americans helped the Pilgrims stay alive. To give thanks and celebrate the first harvest, they threw a 3-day party. It was the first Thanksgiving. You probably think they ate turkey, mashed potatoes, and gravy. Wrong. They probably served deer, goose, duck, stewed pumpkins, and eels. Eels? Gross! All that bad food and no football games to watch on TV, that must have been the worst Thanksgiving in the history of the world. People like naming things after themselves. After the British took over New Amsterdam in 1664, they renamed it New York after the Duke of York. In exchange for a debt, King Charles gave some land to William Penn, and together they named it Pennsylvania. And I thought it was called Pennsylvania because they make pencils there. But it would be cool to have a place named after yourself. If I had some land, I would name it AJ Town. Little by little, colonies were established. Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Rhode Island, Connecticut, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Delaware, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. They were the 13 original colonies. After they established all those colonies, you'll never believe in 1,100 years what happened next. I'm not going to tell you. Okay, I'll tell you. But you have to read the next chapter first, so na boo boo on you. Chapter 3. The colonists are revolting. Do you know how the United States became a separate country from England? Well, here's what happened. One morning, George Washington got out of bed, brushed his fake teeth, and went to his desk. Then he sent an email to his friend Benjamin Franklin asking, "What are you doing today?" Franklin emailed back, "Nothing. What are you doing today?" So Washington emailed, "Nothing. What do you want to do?" And Franklin emailed, "I don't know. What do you want to do?" And Washington emailed, "I asked you first." They went back and forth like that for a while. Neither of them knew what to do, so they decided to start a new country. And that's how the United States was born. Arlo, you totally made that up. They didn't even have email in those days. The truth is, the American Revolution began because England won another war, the French and Indian War. The French colonists and the English colonists were fighting over who would control North America, with help from their parent countries and from Native American allies. England won, but the war cost them a lot of money, so they decided the 13 colonies should chip in to pay for it. I knew that. I was just yanking your chain. So England started charging heavy taxes for lots of things they sold in America. Sugar, coffee, newspapers, and playing cards. The colonists didn't think that was fair because they didn't have a voice in the British Parliament. They protested. Their slogan was, "No taxation without representation." People started hooting and hollering and freaking out, so the British sent troops to Boston to keep them quiet. It didn't work. On March 5th, 1770, the troops started shooting at an angry mob. 5 colonists died. It was called the Boston Massacre. And then the people in Boston really freaked out. The British pulled out their troops and got rid of all the taxes except one, a tax on tea. The colonists weren't satisfied, so one of them came up with a great idea. Instead of paying the tax, they would dump the British tea into Boston Harbor. That was probably the first practical joke in the history of the world. The guy who came up with that idea should have gotten the Nobel Prize. So on December 16th, 1776, a bunch of patriots dressed up as Mohawk people. They climbed aboard 3 British cargo ships and threw all the tea overboard. It was called the Boston Tea Party. I wonder if they dumped sugar and milk into the harbor too. Did you ever taste tea without sugar and milk? Ugh, disgusting. To this day, nobody knows for sure who dumped the tea. The people who did it never revealed their names because they didn't want to get punished. We do know that one man named John Crane got knocked unconscious by a flying tea crate. The other patriots thought he was dead, and they hid his body under a pile of wood shavings. But the joke was on them because Crane woke up a few hours later. Surprise! The King of England, King George III, got really crazy after the Boston Tea Party. With the King's approval, Parliament closed the port, sent more soldiers, and told the colonists they had to give the soldiers food and lodging. Well, you can imagine how that went over with the colonists. Some of them got together in Philadelphia to talk about what to do next. It was called the First Continental Congress. People started to whisper about declaring independence from England and forming their own country. Isn't this exciting, Arlo? No. Arlo, sometimes I think you just like to disagree with everything I say, no matter what it is. I do not. Anyway, the war officially broke out on April 19th. 1775, at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts. The British soldiers were called Redcoats because their uniforms were red. So they had the perfect name. Yes, and the Redcoats were planning to capture the colonists' supply of gunpowder. That's the powder you put into guns, so it had the perfect name too. Can you please stop interrupting, Arlo? Nobody cares about which things have the perfect name. Anyway, the colonists were waiting with their guns, and the Redcoats were forced to retreat. And the colonists shouted, "Na na na boo boo" at them. Arlo, I really doubt that they shouted, "Na na na boo boo." Hey, you don't know. You weren't there. The next big battle was called the Battle of Bunker Hill, even though the battle really took place on nearby Breed's Hill. So it didn't have the perfect name. Shh! The British were planning to camp out in the hills, which were across the river from Boston. But Patriot spies discovered the plan, and the night before the British were going to arrive, the Patriots beat them to it and built a fort on Breed's Hill. The British couldn't believe their eyes when they woke up the next morning. In their face! The Patriots must have yelled, "Na na na boo boo" at them then, right? No, but according to legend, during the battle someone yelled, "Don't shoot until you see the whites of their eyes." After that battle, the Second Continental Congress named George Washington the commander-in-chief of the army. He told Congress he would take the job without pay, and he did, for 8 years. Wow, that's a long time to go without making any money. But I guess in those days they didn't have movies or video games or malls where you could buy stuff anyway, so it probably didn't matter. Do you know what was one of the first things Washington did when he arrived in Massachusetts? Go to the bathroom? That's what I do after a long trip. No, he asked how much gunpowder the Patriots had when he was told that they only had 36 barrels. Washington was so upset that he couldn't talk for 15 minutes. So do you know what George Washington did next? He went to the bathroom? No, he sent spies into Boston to spread the rumor that they had so much gunpowder they didn't know what to do with it all. The British believed it and didn't attack. That gives me a good idea for a way to get out of doing homework. Just tell the teacher that you did so much homework that you didn't know what to do with it all. That probably won't work, Arlo. But the Patriots had to use tricks like that because they didn't have the money or supplies to defeat the British. Some of the soldiers in the Continental Army had no shoes. They left bloody footprints in the snow. They couldn't afford a navy, so they hired pirates to attack British merchant ships. Pirates? Pirates are cool. I like when they say "arg" all the time and dance around on peg legs with a parrot on their shoulder. I think that only happens with pirates on TV, Arlo. Anyway, Washington faked out the British again later in the war. He let them think he was going to attack New York. He even had engineers prepare what looked like a major camp in New Jersey, complete with enough ovens to bake thousands of loaves of bread. The British got ready to defend New York. Meanwhile, Washington's army was sailing south to attack Yorktown, Virginia. That was the final battle of the war. Man, those British dudes would fall for anything. Here's an interesting story, Arlo. One of the men who helped George Washington defeat the British was from France. His title was the Marquis de Lafayette. He was a major general. But the most interesting part is that when he joined the Continental Army, Lafayette was just 19 years old. Yes, you read that right. 19. He was a teenager. I wondered if that Lafayette kid had to take time off from school. He probably had to get permission from his parents. I can just imagine the conversation Lafayette had with his mother. Hey, Mom, can I go to America to help them fight their war for independence? Not until you finish your homework, you can't. Oh, Mom. First homework, then war, young man.